I've got a lot to cover. We're going to go a mile wide and an inch deep. My perspective is going to be a bit different. I promise there won't be any Verizon data breach stats or any legislation stuff in there. So it's based on my experiences. We're going to share with you a few stories and the knowledge that I've gained in my consulting experience across, national key points, critical infrastructure, governments across Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. We're also going to take and give you a unique perspective in terms of Industry 4.0 and cybersecurity with regards to designing effective solutions and why we need to change our thinking with regards to cybersecurity. So let's get into it. I'd like to start off with this slide. Brian Snow, if you don't know who he is, pretty much worked for the NSA, head of information assurance for the NSA, but he had multiple positions in there for about 20 years. Also an academic, and he pretty much designed the crypto codes around the command and control infrastructure for the US nuclear launch codes, right? Very clever guy. And he said in one of his talks, I'm here to tell you that your cybersecurity systems continue to function and serve you not due to the expertise of your cybersecurity staff, but solely due to the sufferance of your opponents, right? So we've just gotten lucky because the guy next to us is being compromised, right? When it comes to headline cybersecurity messages, there is no shortage of incidents globally. But once again, my perspective is going to be the uniquely African perspective with data and information that we have in terms of what's going on our continent, right? Now, I'm not singling out these companies. I know colleagues at Standard Bank were in the media last year around a large cyber attack. We've got Ghana, we've got Kenya. These stories go unnoticed. One of the challenges is, and my only note on legislation is that we don't have breach notification laws. And this is why we don't know about things, right? So it's making headline news. It does affect the GDP of a country, and we don't know how big the problem is. That's a cause for concern. So let's talk about cyber criminals, right? I've spent most of my career in various forms trying to understand and track down bad guys in various industries. And in this slide, we talk about innovation in cyberspace. The innovation that we're seeing from the criminals, right? We stand on this side. So the innovation that we're seeing from organized crime. So the picture on your left is a picture of law enforcement that has dismantled one of the world's first encrypted long-range communication networks, right? And if you had to hazard a guess, who would have been using this infrastructure? That infrastructure cost about just under $100 million US to actually to get out, right? So you pretty think maybe it's law enforcement, maybe FBI, CIA, one of the governments out there. But the actual fact was that this was commissioned by Los Zetas, Mexico's biggest drug cartel at the time, right? And necessity is the mother of all invention. So the problem they had was the DEA and the feds and Mexican law enforcement eavesdropping on communications, right? And intercepting shipments, right? So organized crime has a lot of money. So kidnap a few engineers, get them to work for you, and build an encrypted communication network to ensure your comms are all secure, all right? The picture on your right-hand side, that's what we call a narc sub. And thanks to the Colombian narcs, I think it was pre-Escobar's time, one of their biggest challenges was getting shipments of cocaine across to the US. Traditionally, they would use speedboats, but speedboats are no match for the US Navy, right? With lots of funding and applying your mind using technology, once again with the help of a few good engineers that they didn't kidnap this time, but asked them to work for them. So I think it was Russian and German engineers, submarine engineers and designers. They then developed what we call a narc sub. That's in the jungles of Colombia. That could actually move about 10 tons of cocaine, right? That's a lot of money. And this stuff still gives the US Navy a hard time to pick up. It's a massive problem at the moment for the US. So those stories are not interesting for what you think they are, right? What's interesting about this is that this thinking is more than 10 years old. So can you imagine what's going on in cyberspace? Well, let's tell you. That innovation, all this happened from an organized crime point of view. They look at cyber as a new revenue channel. It's a new channel to conduct business. It's a new channel to scrub my money in a cryptocurrency of my choice, clean my funds, right? Cyber is if you were in some of the earlier talks, you would have seen the deep web, the surface web. The bad guys look at our infrastructure that we use on a day-to-day basis as free computing resources. You pay for their resources and infrastructure, and they get it for free by compromising that, all right? So if we had to look at malware, we're starting to see the bad guys adopt an Industry 4.0 attitude towards life. They're far ahead of the game than we are. So using building blocks of automation, using building blocks of big data analysis, BI. I haven't seen AI as yet, but there is some interesting stuff we are seeing coming through. So if we talk about malware, they're also starting to diversify their engagement models. So for you to be a bad guy out there, you could literally, all you need is an internet connection and access to funds. You can go online and buy bad software. You can go, if you know where to look, you can buy bad software. You don't need to be technical. You don't need to know how to deploy that bad software, right? And this bad software, the malware that we talk about, can do all sorts of things, from ransomware to stealing information to IP to you name it, compromising large banks out there, right? In this particular version, we're in the Russian underground, and this particular hacker is selling malware of your choice. Once again, you're going to tell him, what do you want to target? A bank? Just, you want to target the whole of Africa, computers, normal average people, and he'll get you the malware, develop it for you. He'll also charge you different models. So you can either buy the malware outright and then distribute it yourself, or you can buy different pricing models. So $70 for 1,000 installs, or you want to target Android phones in South Africa, $1 to $2 for Android phones. There's different engagement models. So these guys have already harnessed Industry 4.0, and they've now got different engagement models in terms of cybercrime in the underworld, right? It's better. So once they've developed this malware for you, right, it's software, right? Antivirus is a dead technology. It's not going to do anything for you, right? So these guys will develop software, and because they're competing, the various bad guys, the Russians, the Ukrainians, there's lots of guys competing in the space in the deep web. You've got to make sure your product has the best quality of service. You've got to have the best SLAs, the best turnaround times. Sounds strange, right? These guys are a lot more organized than we think they are, okay? So this, it's a bit unclear, but what this is, so back in the Russian underground, the guy that we were looking at buying malware from, it actually gives you a screenshot. So we've tested it. Here's all the antiviruses out there. None of them are going to pick up this new malware that we've written for you, right? To make matters worse, what we can do for an additional fee is charge you a crypto service, so they would then encrypt the source code on this, right? To make it really difficult for analysts to reverse engineer it once it's out in the wild, right? So you are 100% sure that this is going to work. You're going to make a ton of money. If you really want to go all out, right? Now this is where organized crime in the deep web really gets organized. So from a banking environment, apart from all the banking regulations, one of the biggest things we go after is something called AML, anti-money laundering, to ensure we stop terrorism and the stuff that the bad guys are doing in that space. From an organized crime point of view, what they do now is you can say, okay, well, I'd like to target this country, or I'd like to target this particular brand, or I just want to target corporates in the South African space. So you can maximize your spend based on your targeted spend, based on where you want to target and how much you want to get out of it, right? So you can't see this, but it's categorized by traffic, by country, by revenue stream, to say here's the top 4 in South Africa that we can transfer $1 million or R1 million out of their accounts. And the best part is the malware is automated. the stuff is automated. In terms of our threat actors, these are the three threat actors. Nation states, those motivated by profit, and those motivated by cause. I'm not going to mention too much about this, but we've seen all of these guys in the South African space already, right? In terms of the three forces of cyber, what's going to drive cyber and issues of cybercrime moving forward that's linked to the fourth industrial revolution? We've got Moore's law, we've got the fourth industrial revolution, and we've got the economic and political climate. Moore's law, ton of resources, faster and cheaper every day. The fourth industrial revolution, tough economic times, everyone's looking for new revenue streams, new ways of computing, IoT devices, AI, etc. And we're putting more and more services online without the relevant security. So now you've got faster services, you've got more services, and then you've got changes in the political climate. The geopolitical situation globally is in chaos at the moment, right? Which creates uncertainty and instability in political systems globally. Unemployment's on the rise, the bad guys are everywhere. They then utilize the effects of the three forces with regards to resources, in terms of hacking your resources that they get for free and utilizing it for bad stuff. This is going to perpetuate moving forward. In terms of other building blocks you need to pay cognizant fact to is the Assange effect, the Snowden effect, and attack surface complexity. Sorry, I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm trying to bullet through it, right? So this is when you're designing security, forget about everything you know. Keep this in mind. The Assange effect with WikiLeaks. Everyone is now a hacktivist. Your employee, your customers, everyone has a voice. If they feel you've done something wrong, they have a platform now to go and make their voice vocal about it and divulge information. The Snowden effect, releasing NSA spy tools, etc. What is shown to us is that there's some bad software out there that's now being released in the public domain. Not only do security analysts have access to it, the bad guys have taken this nuclear-grade weapons in terms of malware and they're using it against us, right? And our defenses can't deal with that, all right? So we have to know that's going to be prolific moving forward. The attack surface complexity is huge. Your code base, no longer your applications and your front end. Your code base is your attack surface complexity, the lines of code. The hardware that you're using is your attack surface complexity. So design security thinking about that. What do I mean by that? The Linux kernel, when it was launched, had 10,000 lines of code. In 2017, the Linux kernel has 33 million lines of code. Your web browser has 20 million lines of code. Google has one of the best developers and security strategies in the world, and they still get hacked. All right? They have savant code auditors going with a fine-tooth comb with their codes. They still get hacked. Right? So pay attention to your attack surface, your real attack surface, the open source components, the closed source components you're using. Hardware point of view, if you have a new computer, an Apple Mac, or you're using a fancy dongle, or if you have an SD card, a micro storage card, those things have microprocessors in it. It has a storage device in it. So malware is being developed to target those IoT type devices now. Your attack surface complexity is massive. All right? To give you an idea from an IoT point of view that the South African industry is now venturing off into the space. Here's a search of medical devices. These are DICOM devices in the South African space. If you've done an X-ray at your local clinic, chances are it's on one of these devices. And this is live on the internet, open source information with minimal security. Right? I contacted a few of these guys and gave up to a point because the local desktop support guy was putting this stuff online. If you look at our gas stations, filling stations, this is a IoT sensor that tells the fuel pump gauge or the tanks that they're empty and they need to be refueled. So that's efficiency, that's automation, making sure that the turnover at your filling station is always running. Right? This stuff is online. Online doesn't mean it's insecure, but when I look at the security, most of the stuff has basic security on it. In terms of IoT, this is what a ransomware note looks like. If you were in Kenya or in the South African space, and if you're a large bank, expect to get one of these things. We've seen 30 gig denial of service attacks in this country on the South African banking industry. We've prevented it and mitigated it. But the trick is to make sure that parallel sectors are aware of this stuff. There is hope. It's not all lost. Beware of guys trying to sell you more blinking boxes to fix stuff in your server room. Buy this and you'll be sorted. Buy that and you're sorted. None of them are going to give you 100% guarantee. And when something goes wrong, they will all turn down to a limited liability clause in their contract. So be careful of blinking boxes and buying more blinking boxes in your server room. Be careful of charlatans. There are a ton of guys and vendors out in this space that have all suddenly become cybersecurity experts in the space. Watch out. There's a ton of information being thrown at you. Question it. Keep life simple, guys. And lastly, 80-20 reality. 80% of cyber is information security. Get the basics done right. 20% is the stuff that's going to kill you, the APTs and the rest of it. That's an industry and a country push with the national CSIR, etc. The rest of it is reality. What do I do right now? Resiliency. Do I have an incident response plan? Can I recover my company? How do I handle the media fallout? That's right now. You can't wait for the 80-20 to land. All right? Advocatus diaboli, the devil's advocate. So in our world, we talk about red teaming. Right? Red teaming didn't really start from the military. It started with a role in the Roman Catholic Church, the office of the devil's advocate. Someone to question internal staff, internal defenders, because we all suffer from bias. When you've been working for the same company for a long time, you will have bias when you're building defenses. This is the NIST standard, still rings true. You can bring any standard out there, but standards are only as good as you apply it. The Titanic was also built on standards and best practices. Right? Keep things simple. Security can be an enabler. Share your knowledge, and I'm going to leave it there because I'm out of time. All right. I'm on Twitter, and that's my blog site. Thanks very much.